Here's the hit by Matt Rempe on Nathan Bastian, and before I get into it, I just want to make clear that I am against having a blanket rule for head contact. I think there should be a parameter for avoidable head contact. I think it's actually not just a good idea, but it's actually vital for player safety. Because if you just call every bit of head contact, no matter what a player does, then players aren't going to learn what to do and what not to do. You have to have some sort of parameter for if somebody does all the right things and it just happens to end up in head contact, we need to have that in the rule book. So I agree with the rule. Now, having said that, this is a match penalty. I think that was a terrific call by the officials. This is not unavoidable head contact. This is shoulder to head, not head to shoulder. It's not the fault of the attacking player that head contact happened here. Rempe has a lot of time to think about this. He's jumping off the bench. He's covering a lot of ice really quickly and built up a lot of speed. And look, he is low. I get it. He's a tall guy. Don't give me that. I know he's low here, but look on contact, how he pops that shoulder up. Boom. He rotates and leads with his shoulder. His arm is tucked. Great. It's not an elbow. It's a shoulder to the head. I see that. But he led with his shoulder. And I know some people think you're supposed to lead with the shoulder. They said he did everything right. He had his arm tucked. He was low. He led with the shoulder. What's the problem? The fact that he led with his shoulder is the problem. It's not called shoulder contact. They call it shoulder to shoulder, but you're not supposed to be aiming for the shoulder. You're supposed to be aiming for the body, the core. It's called body contact for a reason, a body check. You're supposed to be going core to core. You're not supposed to lead with your shoulder. You're supposed to use your core to try and hit the core of your opponent. So the fact that he does rotate and shrug that shoulder through violently is exactly the problem. If he just stays low and rotates his body to use his hips to drive his core, which is basically the place of his body underneath his arm and his hips, if he drives that hip into that shoulder, there is no problem here. Yeah, the head's probably going to get hit, but his core will go through the opponent's core after it hits the head. Look at how low and compact he is. I know he's 6'7", right? But he's pretty compact. Now, he could get lower, and I think we should ask him to get lower, but fair enough. He's in a crunch. But what he needs to do now is rotate, either stop up and allow Bastian to run into him, or rotate enough that his hips are going through Bastian's hips. But instead, he drives that shoulder through the head, and his hips aren't doing anything. His legs are spread open backwards the opposite way, and his arm is the only thing making contact. And that's a choice he made. Now, to be fair, I always show what I would ask a player to do. I can't just sit there and tell them what not to do. What would I have them do differently? Watch these hits. Tom Wilson, he's not a small man. He's a pretty big dude. Look what he does here. He doesn't lead with his shoulder. His arm stays tucked, but his shoulder stays low too. All he does is rotate his entire body. His shoulder doesn't go up or out, and it's more hip to hip, side to side contact than anything. That is straight through the core. Let's watch that again. Look how compact he is, and his knees stay bent the whole time. And even when he does kind of adjust his upper body, it's not to drive his shoulder through. It's to make sure his hip rotates, and now that is hip to hip, side to side contact. Beautiful. Here's another one. McAvoy on Tom Wilson. Look at McAvoy. There's absolutely no change in his body at all. He rotates hip to hip, core to core, and the bodies collide. Here's another one. Mo Sider. He is not a small individual. This player has their head down, has no idea he's coming. And look what he does. He does not drive his shoulder forward. Look at it, how low he is, and it's hip, body. The shoulder is in front because, yeah, that's the anatomy of the human body. But he's not leading with the shoulder per se. The shoulder is just another part of his core. This is body-to-body contact through the chest. Not aiming for shoulder to shoulder. It's core to core. Even if he hit the head here, which he doesn't because he stays super low for a big man, but even if that player had their head bent even more, he would go through the head and into the body, not just through the head. As it happens, this player's head is pretty low down, and he just comes all the way underneath the chin. There's absolutely nothing with his shoulder there. One more. Ilya Lyubushkin on Holloway. Holloway is tucked completely. He has no idea this hit's coming. And again, there's no lead with the shoulder. He's just putting himself in a lane, and that player skates right into Lyubushkin's body. Now, yeah, there's a little bit of shoulder to head contact, not much, and it goes from the head through to the body. The head is not taking the brunt of that force. So having looked at those, look at the difference here. When he rotates his body, he pumps his shoulder out first, drives his shoulder forward and through the head. There's no body-to-body contact here. The head takes all of that force. He needs to rotate more, stay lower, and make sure that that hip leads the contact. I know his hip is lined up with the chest, but it doesn't hit enough of it because his shoulder has already rotated Bastian's body around so far that there's not much core left to hit. The head is easily taking the brunt of that contact. Imagine the same hit if he had stayed low and turned almost sideways like Seider here and used the side of his body to hit. Would have been a much different scenario. I'm not asking him to let him go. I'm asking him to not pick the head as a result of poor body positioning, poor angle of approach, which is oddly enough under Rule 48, illegal check to the head. Whether the player attempted to hit squarely through the opponent's body and the head was not picked as a result of poor timing or poor angle of approach or unnecessary extension of the body upward or outward. I would say two of those three things are true. Poor angle of approach and unnecessary extension of the body upward or outward. With that shoulder shrug, he's leading with the shoulder. You guys said it. He's leading with the shoulder. There's your problem. Parameter 1, Rule 48, illegal check to the head. And it's interesting to note that the officials called this a blanket major penalty, and they wanted to review it. So they called it a major. They could have gone the other way and reduced it to a minor. There's no provision for a major penalty under Rule 48. So when they decided to go with illegal check to the head, or what they called head contact, they had to decide whether they were going to go to a minor or a match. And they chose to elevate this to a match. That is critical. The referee at his discretion may assess a match penalty if, in his judgment, the player attempted to or deliberately injured his opponent with an illegal check to the head. So they're calling this basically an intent to injure, meaning he did not do nearly enough to avoid head contact. And I completely agree with them. It's amazing to me that the on-ice officials can see an intent to injure, match penalty-worthy offense, and the Department of Player Safety is going to do nothing about it. Are they going against their officials? It sure seems like it. What kind of message is that sending to the rest of the league if they don't even actually review this and at least talk to Rempe and see what happened? This is entirely an illegal hit. It's targeting the head. It's picking the head and causing a head injury. And the Department of Player Safety is dropping the ball on this one big time.